Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and today I am joined by the Rhodey to my Tony Stark, the Bucky to my Steve Rogers, the Loki to my Thor, and most definitely the Groot to my Rocket Raccoon, Brian E. Roach. What's up, Brian?
I am Groot.
You're like the teenage Groot. You're like an old man Groot, but you have the attitude of the teenage Groot.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Yeah, there aren't that many trees on this planet that have been around as long as you, so I guess it's fitting.
That's terribly unfair.
I wasn't sure if you liked which one of those you liked better, so I threw them all at you because the Avengers Infinity War is fresh in my brain. Don't worry, folks, if you haven't seen it, we won't spoil it at all. We're not Eric Herman, but I didn't know which one of those you liked. I mean, there's the War Machine with the Iron Man. I thought you were more like a Loki or a trickster type. I'm Thor. I'm the good-looking guy with the muscles and that nature. So.
I don't mind being essentially what is he, an ice troll or something? I can't remember what
Loki. Dark elf.
Loki is, yeah, dark elf. I kind of like being a dark elf, although back in the day I did not use the dark elf character in Dungeons and Dragons. I always played a dwarf.
Wow. Okay. I'm of the age of nerd and dorkedness that I was playing the Magic card game, but. Alas, aside from the Shivan dragons of the world and trolls and elves and nymphs and all kinds of things like blights and moshes and marshes and death. I'm losing my voice, man. This is no good for today. But we have some draft news. We do. We have a whole lot to cover because we didn't get to talk about day 3 and the overall picture and the UDFAs or undrafted college free agents that have made their way to the team. So I think we need to get to it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So now that I've cleared my throat away from the microphone, and folks don't realize this, we had some nice, me and you were just like a comedy of errors over the last 2 days trying to get together and finally put this thing together. But we were plenty busy, and thank you all returning listeners and new listeners that are now returning. Hopefully you stick around. Lots of people subscribed on YouTube. Lots of people heard our voice. There were some great compliments. There were a few people that were upset with my Landry Jones comment comparing with Mason Rudolph from day one, saying if the Steelers ended up drafting him, and I think they just don't realize how much of a high regard I hold Landry Jones. They actually think I'm probably one of the people who thinks he should have been cut yesterday. So
just to be clear, I think that guy was actually calling me a tool.
Oh, because you didn't like the Rudolph pick. Hey, you know what? Here's the interesting thing with all this. This was a tweet from somewhere from somebody. This is the day after the draft is the day that everyone justifies all their picks and how their teams made the right decisions and blah, blah, blah. Listen, man, there is just no reason to be negative about this because, number one, none of these guys have taken a snap. They haven't set foot on a field. And if you really believe the Steelers or any of the 31 other teams in the NFL are drafting players to tank or suck or lose or get an F draft grade, which they could care less about what anybody thinks of their draft. They're trying to improve their football teams by hook, by crook, beg, borrow, and steal. And that's what they think. That's what everybody thinks they're doing when they bring these, like 300, almost 300 new kids in, because then you got the undrafted free agents and whatnot too. So this is pointless at this point to call anybody busts and give bad draft grades and say this person's draft sucked and this didn't, because you just never know. You get that 6th round guy that's Antonio Brown sitting around out there, and he's like the best, one of the greatest wide receivers in Steelers and maybe NFL history.
Yeah, well, and it's like we talked about the last time we were on. There's an initial visceral reaction to the pick, but then once you look at it, you decide, what else were they going to do? This was definitely the best value that's there. I may not like Mason Rudolph, but I hope he succeeds. I don't hold ill will against him. I may not have thought it was a pick I would have liked to see happen, but gee, I hope that he succeeds. I hope that I hope the guy who said he's going to bookmark the thing to come back and tell me how stupid I am later on gets that opportunity.
Hey, yeah. Well, don't we all? I mean, seriously. Now, I remember talking about Rudolph specifically, and not just the last podcast, but early on when we were talking about whether the Steelers – first, we're the guys that are like, don't draft a quarterback. And then it started to look like, you know what? There's enough guys here, but we still didn't want a quarterback in the first round. And maybe I was telling everybody listening right now on day one, I didn't want – I said Mason Rudolph, Landry Jones, maybe 2.0. Okay, maybe. I think he has a higher ceiling, obviously. But I mean, great college accolades. Oh, by the way, I botched many people. I told you, I said people would correct me if I was wrong, and I was probably wrong on the Marcus Wheaton thing. But it began with an O. He went to Oregon State. Not Oklahoma State, but he began with an O. Close enough. You know what I mean? So a retraction there. But the Landry Jones thing, I think Landry Jones gets a lot of flack as a backup quarterback. He's a lot more solid as a backup. No one here has ever said he's going to be Big Ben's successor. We don't know what Mason Rudolph is. He could be Ben's successor. Ben is going to leave some very big shoes to fill, just like Hines Ward did, just like Jerome Bettis did, just like Troy Polamalu did, just like James Harrison did. Just the list goes on and on and on. This isn't somebody you just pluck off the street. You could only hope Mason Rudolph can step in and be the Andrew Luck to a Peyton Manning or a Aaron Rodgers to a Brett Favre, because we have beaten this to death over very many. Go back in the archives, especially to YouTube subscribers and listeners out there. Every single show we've ever done is out there. You could hear us saying this same stuff last year and the year before that, and we were vehemently against it last season. Now when you take a guy like Rudolph, you're probably looking at the twilight of Ben's career. If he hangs around, Rudolph's going to be around for 4 years under a rookie contract. Is Ben going to be around 4 years? I don't know. So maybe, they saw very good value. There was nothing else there in the third round that they liked, and we defended this pick, even though you hated it, but for the value, and they're thinking they have a first round grade on Mason Rudolph. Getting him in the third is a steal then.
Absolutely. And look, I freely admit that Zach Meckler, he and I, as you know, we got into some back and forth about this pick. And Zach is much better at analyzing quarterback footwork and things like that. And he tells me that, in fact, the issues with Rudolph throwing floaters and weak duck balls has more to do with his footwork than his arm. Well, I'm willing to take that for, at face value because I bow to Zach's knowledge of footwork
as do
beyond my own. So I, as I said, I just didn't want a quarterback, period. But when you start to look at what is available and how the boards fell, as we said, what was the best value? Well, this was the best value. And if it works out and this is the guy that eventually takes Ben's spot, great. If it doesn't, I guess it really isn't that the end of the world, because when you think about it, what else were they going to take? There really wasn't anything sitting there at that spot, any other player, any other prospect that they had graded as high and was as high of a value. Any other option would have been probably a reach. In many people's mind, I know that Mayock called it one of the best picks in the draft. Immediately following the draft, and why not team him with the guy you got as his wide receiver partner? So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Now somebody was asking whether we gave credence to Pro Football Focus, or when did you ever give credence to Pro Football Focus? And if you listen to us enough, we don't think it's gospel. We think it's hocus pocus. But I have pulled this up because they screwed up a link on the email they sent out. I get their daily emails, and they screwed up and sent me the PFF NFL Mock Draft 5, Steve Palazzolo, April 23rd. So about a week ago, right? And they nailed the first pick in this mock draft. They said Baker Mayfield was going to the Browns.
Yes, they did.
And then they said Darnell was going. Did you see this when I sent you this?
Yep.
Oh,
I did.
This is great. You know where I'm going because Maurice Hurst, 4 overall from Michigan to the Browns. that did not happen. And another guy in the top 10, Harold Landry, number 8 to the Bears, did not happen.
Nope.
We get a little further down here is where it gets a lot more interesting because we get into the 20s. And at number 22, the Buffalo Bills get their quarterback of the future, Mason Rudolph from Oklahoma State, not Oregon State. But, I want to say why the Wheaton thing came up in my mind. I was equating Mike Wallace to Martavis Bryant as Marcus Wheaton maybe is to James Washington. So, you know, in that role of – anyway, Mason Rudolph, 22 to the Bills. And then we go down to 26, and James Washington, the aforementioned wide receiver, 26th to the Falcons, 2 picks before the Steelers get Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech. Well, they almost got that one. They got the name wrong. It is the other Edmonds that went number 1 overall, Terrell. And I got to ask, of these picks, which of these is your favorite? Because we got a few guys to talk about here. We actually 3 that went on day 3 that we haven't discussed yet on the show. So overall, who's your favorite? I'll give you mine after because I don't think it's fair if I pick because then you're not going to want to pick the same guy and be contrarian. I know how you are.
Well, that's true. But, you know, in essence, I'm torn because my favorite pick in this draft is probably a combination of Terrell Edmonds and Marcus Allen. And the reason I say I love the James Washington pick. It could have been my favorite pick. You know Mason Rudolph's not going to be my favorite pick. So be that as it may. But the combination of Terrell Adams and Marcus Allen has got me thinking, and it certainly isn't a unique thought because it's been tossed out there on the interwebs left and right over the last couple of days. But when this came through on Saturday, it really did start me thinking, you know what? These are guys that are hybrid type guys. These are Jabril Pepper types. They're guys that can play all over the place. They're Swiss Army knives. And maybe what we're going to see is a different kind of Steelers defense than what we've come to expect. Maybe these guys, as you've said too, are the replacements for Ryan Shazier. Maybe not replacements, but they're the people that are going to fill that void. And it isn't going to be incumbent on them to get that specific type of inside linebacker because these guys, you put a little weight on Terrell Edmonds or Marcus Allen, and they're Ryan Shazier sized. So, you know, you're looking at what I think is an interesting evolution within how the Steelers are likely to play defense next year and the types of sub packages, especially nickel and dime stuff that they're going to roll out that utilize this now vast array of safety talent that they have that really is very hybridized. So I'm kind of excited about that combination of Edmonds and Allen as added tools to that defensive backfield.
And, you know, I'm looking at this right now. By the way, yes, agree with everything there. I mean, I think the days of seeing Vince Williams on third and long or third and 5 are over. You're not going to see, if they were to bring Lawrence Timmons back by any chance, that wouldn't happen. I don't think John Bostic might not be out there. And I said this before, this is all about stopping the tight end position. This is about stopping Gronk. This is about stopping Kelsey. It's about stopping those style of players. And this could even be Sean Davis moving around and sliding around. So they can't just key, I don't think they're, or Morgan Burnett. All of these guys are so versatile, I don't think you're going to be able to key on just one. And when you throw Mike Hilton out there and Cam Sutton, who, you know, those two guys are very similar. We didn't get to see Sutton do some of this stuff, but I know when we watched some of the film and stuff on Sutton last year, sure tackler, everything like that, this might be wicked, man. They're just going to have guys buzzing. I said this is going to be a different set of killer bees. They're going to be swarming that secondary, that second level of the defense. And it's going to be interesting because, you know, they still throw TJ and they throw Bud out in the coverage too. And somehow Cam Hayward, who is what's the word? How do you describe Cam Hayward once again?
Grown ass man.
He ragdolls people around. So, I mean, this is one of those things where, I'm going to give you my favorite pick. It was funny because as I'm looking this up, I'm like, I think somebody else asked this too, and I you know what? I failed to look it up, and I don't know what happened here, but Okay, so the Steelers, Terrell Edmonds, I like that. James Washington, I came off the couch, and a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going back to the defending the pick and everything else. Well, you don't know who the pick is. And then sometimes you may have been, we're looking in a whole different direction. The guys we were looking at were like Justin Reed, for example, or I was even looking at Tavarius Moore, maybe as a second or third round type guy. We were talking to MJ Stewart in our back rooms, but we were really looking inside linebacker, and all three of those guys were gone. And Edmund, I remember Terrell's name coming up, and it was like one of those things. I think it was Adam Kaplan who may have said it. I may be incorrectly attributing this, but I think he was the one that said he might sneak into day one. His stock was rising, and then lo and behold, he did. And a lot of people are like, some people take too much to heart about if somebody's a first round pick, or even if somebody's a third round pick. If Mason Rudolph, you fell into whatever. He's the sixth quarterback taken overall in the draft. He's still a top 100 player. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at, cry about, or be sad about. Now, if you think you're better than somebody else like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Rosen or any of these other guys, okay, then you could have the chip on your shoulder. But I think it benefits somebody like Mason Rudolph. He should be ecstatic that he fell where he did, because he's with a good team. He's not in Cleveland, you know what I mean? So for all of those, the pomp and circumstance there, the Mason Rudolph pick is my favorite for a number of reasons, because number one, this is the pick that initially that they got and then traded to Seattle. They got it from Oakland via the Martavis Bryant trade. Now, some people don't like the fact that Martavis Bryant was going to be a cheap one-year rental. They shouldn't even have had him this year anyway if he wouldn't have gotten suspended and whatnot with his off-field issues. So this was a bonus year, and more than likely he's looking for a payday type year, and you never know. You're having enough headaches with a particular running back right now. So I think they just didn't want to deal with all of that this year again. Any potential circumstance where maybe we don't have this guy on the field, it's time to move on now instead of waiting a year. And I said this once before, it's the same thing with like Rudolph, now James Washington. This gives you flexibility because you have an extra third round pick. So if they were thinking they needed to grab Rudolph in the second, or if they were thinking they needed to grab Rudolph in the third, they were a lot further down in the third with a lot less ammunition to move up. Now that seventh round pick that they had that they gave Seattle, that got them to move up a few spots over the Cincinnati Bengals, who they got wind of and admitted this too, Brian. I saw it.
Yes, they did.
That they were, in fact, they said that their room might have been bugged, a New England Patriot trick apparently, because they were looking at Mason Rudolph. So this is why I like the pick, because for one, it gave the Steelers the flexibility to move on from Martavis Bryant, replace him with a high potential player who could stretch the field that they can have for a longer period of time for 3 years after Bryant, and then it gave them the ability with the extra pick and then the little bit of the ammo with the seventh round pick, and it was very highly unlikely that I don't know that everyone would make this roster. We're going to talk about that in a minute too, this year as far as all these rookies coming in. But it gave them the ability to jump over the Bengals and potentially weaken. Can you imagine, like I said, if Rudolph went to the Bengals, was better than Andy Dalton, supplants him and turns the Bengals into a playoff contender? I'm all for it just from that aspect, and then looking at what else was really there. I mean, the only way this backfires is if they passed on somebody like Malik Jefferson, which we all feel that this is probably the better choice over Malik Jefferson anyway, and the way that the defense is probably changing their schemes. It doesn't hurt. They got an awful lot of value with a guy that they felt was a first-round grade that a lot of the draft analysts, as I said, this PFF mock, Mike Mayock originally, we did a whole podcast on that whole thing. He thought those 6 quarterbacks could all go in the first round. They had a first-round grade on him. You got him in the third round. You got him with an extra pick that you got overpaid for trading for a guy you were going to lose one way or the other anyway. Awesome, man. That's why I like it. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that I love the Rudolph pick, but I love everything that was surrounding that. So that's why that's my favorite pick.
And I know that the vindictiveness of it is part of the allure for you. Just screwing the Bengals over.
I love to smite people.
I can. You're going to talk like that for a week now, aren't you?
Mr. Burns.
You're going to talk. So I'm going to smite people. But it is the part of the allure of that pick, and it's something I like about the pick, even though I'm still not sure. Like, I'm accepting of the pick at this point. It's just I don't know what they're going to do with. Well, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to be practice squad guys.
No,
all right?
no.
I mean, certainly Landry's not. I don't think you can hide Dobbs on the practice squad. I think somebody will snap him up.
Maybe, because you know what? I had a whole thing I wrote about that today, an article on the site, and he's eligible. That's number one because he was inactive. So he didn't get a hat. He was inactive, so he is eligible for practice squad. Here's the thing: they can't just grab them and put them on their practice squad. They have to put them on their active roster. So you know what I mean? Like, all these teams passed on him to begin with, drafting last year.
That's true.
So, you know, the only thing is he has to clear. I think he's going to have to clear waivers. That's the only thing. And then somebody's going to have to put a waiver claim on, and you know what I mean, and grab him. I don't know who may be willing to do that. It's a possibility. I don't see 4 quarterbacks on this depth chart, though.
There's no way they're going to keep all 4 of them, and I think it's unlikely at this point. I would be absolutely stunned if they went into this season with Dobbs and Rudolph as the backups and they let Landry go. That's not going to happen. They need somebody with some experience to back Ben up. You're not going to throw it into an untested rookie, and both of them at this point are the same.
I would be severely upset too if Landry got released and then the Patriots picked him up off of waivers and made him into the next Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, it would be worse than a James Harrison move for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Landry's got another year. Is this the last year on his contract?
Yeah,
I think this is probably Landry's last year here. But unless Rudolph is a bust, if he's terrible and they don't like what they see, then Landry stays. But I think there's a good chance this could be Landry's last season. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But, they did pick some guys after the 4th or the 3rd round.
Oh, they did. But you know what? I still like the guys that we got because quite a few of them loved Mason Rudolph wanted to be a Steeler. So he was like all about it. He was, I guess he was texting Randy Fichtner and he was just, don't forget about me, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty crazy, man. I mean, he almost got to call his shot there. I mean, I bet Baker Mayfield wishes he did. So, but yes, there are other guys. You mentioned Marcus Allen for now.
Yeah.
You probably do love this pick because this is a guy too that I know you were. Just as much as we were saying, don't take a quarterback, no 1st round, no 2nd round. You didn't want Marcus Allen up there in the top half of the draft. But Marcus Allen, 5th round, I'm sure you're jumping out of your shorts just like I was.
Absolutely. And my favorite thing, and I will agree with this statement, is what I think Tomlin said. He will strike you. Marcus Allen will pop you, and he will knock you on your rear end. He is a hitter, and that's part of the allure here. Yes, he primarily is going to be a box safety. He's primarily run support, but we've talked about the fact that people are like, oh, you don't know, that's just what they did with him. Well, they did with him because he's really good at it. But in this hybridized scheme, that may be great. And I think it's great value in the 5th round where they got him. It would have been a massive reach to take him in the first 2 rounds. And I would have been beside myself. I'd have been a block over from myself if that had happened. But here, love it. I love it. I think it's a great value for them. And I think it's part of what leads me to believe that they are interested in doing something a little different than they've done in the past.
Well, it also gave them the ability to say la vie to one J.J. Wilcox, who I was still trying to figure out how he was on the roster. I mean, they added Burnett. They already had Davis. That's 2. They added the missile, Nat Burhey. That's 3. With Wilcox is 4. They still have Jordan Dangerfield. He's around. With Wilcox and Dangerfield, that's 5. And then he just added, now I don't know. Is Edmonds going to be a linebacker? Will they classify Allen as a linebacker? Will they both be safeties? I don't know, but that's like 6 and 7. I'm like, yeah, you know what? This isn't going to last for too long. And he went. And there were some numbers floating around about what kind of cap savings and stuff. And we retweeted it, and that was misrepresented, as Ed Bouchette pointed out. That was, I guess, his salary and not necessarily his cap hit, but there's still a little bit of savings there. Whatever little bit you could put in the piggy bank, they need at this point because they are cash strapped. So, here's another one that's an interesting thing, and I joked about this because I made the graphic that went out like on our Instagram and everything, the Welcome to Pittsburgh thing for Jalen Samuels from NC State, and he was on I believe it was the ESPN feed that I was watching on Saturday, and it said fullback, but they announced him as a running back. The Steelers site has him listed as a running back, and when you look him up, he was playing everything: wide receiver, tight end, wildcat, quarterback. I listed them all as his position because he is a Swiss Army knife.
He is. I think there's a good reason they're not listing him as a fullback. And I know that we've speculated that he can play tight end. He can play as a receiving tight end. When you watch his tape, blocking is questionable. So you're not going to put him in as a fullback to take on blocking responsibilities, and you're not going to put him in as a blocking tight end. And I'm fine with that because what he has on upside as kind of an all-purpose hybrid type running back for third downs, for change of pace, he can catch balls out of the backfield. He can line up as a receiving tight end on the side. He can line up as a wide receiver. I think he offers a lot of flexibility, and again, he's got that ability to be all over the place. And so I forgive the blocking concepts, right? I'm not worried about that. He's got enough size, he's got enough height, enough weight that I don't. This isn't like a Dree Archer pick. You know what I mean? You're not putting this little itty bitty guy out there. He's a decent sized running back with a lot of versatility. And I expect him, I'll say it right now, I expect him to make the roster. We'll see. You never know. But if he shows the flashes that he's shown on tape, I expect him to make the roster over a guy like Fitz or potentially even another running back.
Yeah, you know what? I was trying to think about this Samuels pick in regard to, I'm like, is it Will Johnson again? Is it David Johnson again? And they like the versatility of those players, but let's face it, those weren't guys you necessarily wanted to throw the ball to. So Samuels is we talk about sexy picks. And it's a little more sexier thinking about what you could do on the field with him. I also start to think to myself, life after Bell, or if Bell doesn't sign, or his threat of retirement is real, they're in a pretty good spot here. This is like, would you say Mwelde Moore territory with Willie Parker kind of being like the connotation to James Conner? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it, and I think they could get by just fine with this. So as a 5th-round pick, not too shabby.
No, absolutely. If Le'Veon were to decide that he's done, he's become too big of a rap star or whatever, and he's done, and he's not going to come in and sign the tender, Jalen Samuels, Ridley, and James Conner is a trio of backs that you can rotate and win with. It's that kind of committee. It's the same thing the Patriots do. It's the same thing the Eagles did last year. You've got some reasonable professional backs there. You've got young guys, and you've got versatility amongst them. So yeah, I absolutely think this is a move that makes sense. And while it is really hard to call any 5th-round pick sexy.
True.
Because it's the 5th round. This is a pretty sexy 5th-round pick.
Yeah, and it was Kalen Ballage, I think, went several picks earlier to the Miami Dolphins. That was a guy that I had on that short list for the day 3 picks, and I was like, oh, man, maybe they don't get their running back. So did you know the Bengals did get a QB?
They did?
They did get a QB. I overlooked it too. But I'm only seeing it because I'm going down to the 7th round where Josh Frazier was taken by the Steelers a few picks later. Did you know this? They got the Toledo kid, the Logan Woodside.
Oh, there you go. Hey, well, hey, they're Super Bowl contenders now.
Oh, jeez. And you know what? They had so many picks in this draft that I just, just because you have a lot of picks doesn't mean a whole lot, because even if you only have 7 or 8 picks, half of those guys may not even make the roster. And that's what I'm wondering about Josh Frazier, because as I look at this, let's go through the list real quick. You think there's a snowball's chance in hell that Terrell Edmonds, James Washington, or Mason Rudolph don't make the roster?
Well, Terrell Edmonds is going to make the roster. James Washington makes the roster. Mason Rudolph, there's no way they're going to try and put him on the practice squad because he couldn't clear waivers, so he makes the roster. I think Chucks, the tackle that they took, there's a question there. They're going to have to see what Munchak can do with him, and if they like what they see, he's potential practice squad guy if he can't stay on the field. Samuels, I think, makes the roster. Marcus Allen, I think, makes the roster. And then you get down to Frazier. There's a reason they drafted him. I mean, Carl Dunbar just came from Alabama. This is an Alabama kid.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that they drafted him. So Dunbar has to know that he's seen something in this kid that he likes. And the question is, can he get it out of him? Because apparently, when you read about him, when you look at some of the limited tape, because he didn't get to play much in Alabama.
No, he was a backup.
It wasn't like he was a backup. So, is it that he thinks there's just more maturity that needs to be done? I think this is a very likely practice squad type player, but who knows? Because as I said, it's not like they didn't have a little inside information here.
Oh, they definitely had inside information, and even seeing him being part of, this whole draft process, it was kind of like, hey, this guy barely played, but he's got all the physical attributes that are there. Let me see. I just had him on the screen and lost him. Okay, 6'3", 321. And, Alabama defensive linemen are forces to be reckoned with. I mean, he was backing up Ashawn Robinson the year before, 2016. I'm trying to remember what the gentleman's name is now that he was backing up. He got hurt and he got in and he got a little bit of action. 2016, 2 years ago, was he played in 14 games and he had 8 tackles, 1 for loss. Okay, that shows you how much you don't get a whole lot of tackles all the time as a defensive lineman either. That's a lot of times you're there just plugging the gaps. 2017, 15 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 3 pass breakups and a forced fumble. So in a very limited, short span of time, as far as a 7th round pick, put him on the roster, get rid of Dan McCullers. That's the way I feel about it. The shade tree can go sit under a shade tree. Sorry, Dan, we love you, but this guy might be the nasty that we've been waiting for.
He might be. There's a lot of similarities between Dan McCullers and this kid, though. They both play lethargically. They don't have a lot of quickness. They don't have an initial burst that's really quick. They're more blockers. They eat up blockers more so than they are get off guys. So they're not going to be big playmakers. The difference may be that it's possible Frazier is a little more nasty than McCullers has shown himself to be. And McCullers is, I haven't looked to see if McCullers is on a year-to-year deal. I kind of feel like he could be.
Yes.
At this point. So, if nothing else, it's a body to provide competition in camp and see which one, hey, as Tomlin likes to say, 2 dogs, 1 bone, who's going to grab it?
Deshaun Hand. That's who I was trying to think of. I believe that's who he was backing up was, or was it Daron Payne?
Daron Payne.
Was it Daron Payne? Okay.
I don't know. It's one of the two of them. I don't know. I don't watch Alabama ball that much.
No, not really. But he's a big boy. I don't expect him to move much more than lethargic. This is just a guy. Let's face it. He's a 7th rounder. Nobody's the big snack. We're already acknowledging the Steelers aren't going to play a 3-4. They're not even going to play I don't even think a hybrid 3-4. It's going to be more a hybrid nickel. And at this point, these big guys, they're special teamers. That's where it is. It's punt block. It's field goal. Coverage, things of that nature, and that's probably where they're going to need him. And I don't know. When you're that far, he's pretty close to the bottom. He's near the Mr. Irrelevant pick. He was, 270 something? I'm trying to look it up here real quick. When you get that far down into the draft, 246 out of 256. That's where Josh Frazier went. He could go to the practice squad probably safely. I don't think anybody else was really looking for him unless the Bengals were just like, well, crap, the Steelers got us again. They took Josh Frazier, so we're going to get our quarterback in Logan Woodside. So that's about the only scenario I could see that. But, Dan is served his purpose in much the same way. He was an intriguing prospect with a lot of size. It kind of reminds you of Chukawarma or, God, I need to know how to say this, Okorafor, I think is how you say his name. So yay, I get partial credit. Silver star, not the gold star. I give my draft grade a B+. So my pronunciation key. We've got some guys that we can't pronounce that were picked up as undrafted free agents.
We sure do.
Somebody from Elon, that's an offensive lineman. His first name's Ikenna, I think, and Wakaje. I might have that correct. There's Olasakamni and Endanini, maybe. Man, it's
Adenini. Adenini. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Toledo linebacker who looks pretty sharp, has some upside. Another linebacker. This was one on my short list too because the Steelers had met with him during the whole draft process. A Florida State guy, so Vince Williams was all over it, all over Twitter today. Praising him. Matthew Thomas, and I guess there's already a hive being formed with our own Zach Celedonia around him and James Washington. So and Quadri Henderson, a local guy, a pick guy, wide receiver. So there's several more. Let's see, Jarvarian Franklin, Western Michigan running back, Parker Cothran, defensive tackle from Penn State, Greg Gilmore, a defensive end from LSU, Trey Johnson, corner from Villanova. That's kind of interesting. Villanova, of course, being an FCS school, regardless of the basketball, they're the 1AA variety in football, so smaller there. Pharaoh McKeever, for a tight end, North Carolina State. Let's see who else. Patrick Morris, a center from TCU. They got a guard, Chris Schlager from UAB. Some small school guys here, and this is why they're undrafted, to be completely honest. Jamar Summers, a corner from UConn, and then Kendall Vickers, a defensive end from Tennessee. Man, you know what? The Steelers, for as much as they don't take guys from Alabama, they do take guys from Tennessee and Ohio State, do they not? No Ohio State guys this year, but there's another Tennessee guy.
Yeah, the guy that I kind of like in this group of undrafteds is Greg Gilmore. And the reason I like him, I don't think he's not going to be a starter. But I think he has a chance to stick as depth because he translates better to a 3-4 defensive end than most other guys. He's not a guy that's going to fit in the middle. I don't think that's where his strength lies. But as a 3-4 D end, he can be a decent run stuffer, I think, and he can provide depth at that position. So I kind of like him. The truth is, most of these guys are either practice squad bound or camp bodies. We all know it's true. We like to see if any of them can come across, and every now and then one of them does. But the one I'm interested in is Gilmore. I looked at McKeever, the tight end, because I was trying to find out what kind of tight end he is. Remember last year we had
Chris Hubbard.
No. The guy we interviewed after the draft, he was an undrafted free agent.
Scott Orndorff or Faison Odom.
Faison Odom,
yes.
Who was a heck of a kid, a really nice guy, and we were all intrigued by his size. So I wanted to see if this is that kind of a tight end or if this is more of the blocking kind of tight end. But I haven't found a lot on him. He's not even listed on the NFL draft profiles. So that'll tell you a little something.
Yeah.
But I'm interested by both of the corners that they picked because they're both, as you said, small school guys, one from Villanova, one from UConn. And, then you got other guys from UAB. It's an interesting group, but I think it shows this is a team that doesn't have a lot of need.
Yeah.
And we're forgetting a draft pick that we get this year that isn't really from this year. And I think that's part of the reason that I'm not overly excited about the Toledo linebacker, because even though he's interesting, I've looked at it a little bit of his tape and read a little bit about him, and I don't know. I'm much more excited about Keon Adams coming back than I am about this kid. And that's like it's the same way that the cornerback that never actually panned out from Ole Miss was, except I think there's a much better shot that Keon Adams turns into something than there was with what's-his-face.
Golson?
Yeah, Golson.
Senquez. Senquez is still hanging around. I think the Raiders signed him.
Somebody did. I know. I'll be more impressed the day that he actually plays a snap.
It is a sad story, and it's one of those things where somebody might pull out that bust card on a second round pick. But I mean, the guy just couldn't stay healthy to save his life. He had no college injury history. I mean, that's the craziest part. And he just keeps. Yeah,
I don't. It's just bad luck. I don't think he's a bust per se, but he's just a never start. He can't be a bust because he never actually started to be involved. It's an unfortunate pick. It's like a guy who gets a career-ending injury, except his career-ending injuries appear to have been little itty-bitty nagging ones that just kept him off the field.
Well, we're going to talk a little more about just the roster in general, but just to bring up a few names and maybe to quell some of the yinsing out there over the non-selection of any linebackers, where linebacker always seems to be important to this team. There's still quite a few linebackers on this roster, believe it or not. You got 3 guys that are returning that were all practice squad material from last season. You have Matt Galambos. You have Farrington Hugenin. Hugenin. Man, I can never say his name. And then Keith Kelsey. So all of those guys, maybe they have some upside. Maybe there's something they liked about them that, they're bringing them back to camp and seeing if they could compete for a spot. I mean, stranger things have happened. LJ Ford is stuck around in the league now. He's a 4-year guy. As crazy as that sounds. And then I wanted to mention the one undrafted guy, the one from Elon, the offensive lineman, is Akena Nwakaje, I think is how you say his name. 6'6", 282 is just that kind of struck me as I'm like, that's interesting. It's almost kind of like a Kelvin Beachum sized kind of guy,
this guy's tall and thin, whereas Beachum was short and squat.
Yeah, just the opposite. But I mean, a strange size guy for offensive lineman.
Yeah, strange size guy. Sounds like either as an offensive lineman he needs a little bit more junk in his trunk, but as a tight end or a blocking tight end, he might be a pretty good guy.
Maybe not. So this will be interesting. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else who really sticks around, because I mean they did. I mean, they've got the full roster now, and JJ Wilcox. Some people were trying to say, well, they let him go and he was an experienced player, but he didn't play much past like week 3 or whatever. I mean, he had that one pick that he made against the Chicago Bears, nearly gave us life, and they still botched the game. It was one of the, just talk about comedy of errors. I don't like to relive week 3s from the past few years. It's just, that's about all Wilcox did, and he disappeared completely. It wasn't from lack of needing any type of safety or defensive back help either. The guy just did not receive any playing time. I think some was penalty driven. I think some was just ability driven. And like I said, I was surprised he was still hanging around after they cleaned house with Mitchell. They got rid of Robert Golden, and they got rid of Wilcox now. That really should tell you, with the arrival of Edmonds, with the arrival of Marcus Allen, with the arrival of Morgan Burnett, and the arrival of the missile, Nat Burhey. I'll never get tired of saying the missile. They're definitely headed. They're changing gears. Whatever we've been doing has not been working. And let's face it, if they put Terrell Edmonds or even Marcus Allen out there, or Sean Davis or Morgan Burnett, any of those guys roaming around in that second tier of the defense or whatever is going to be better than having Sean Spence on the field.
Yes. There's no doubt about that. And I want to give a quick shout out to the guy who won our March Dimes contest. John Wilson is his name. He made a nice donation, I think $60, and that got him 60 entries. But but we did better this year than we did last year for the March of Dimes. So I want to thank everybody that donated. We got, I think, $446 in total donations.
Very nice,
which is pretty good. A couple people gave $100 each, and then we had everybody really kind of chipped in, and we got a nice total out of that. And John Wilson came up at the top. John, if you listen to the podcast, give us a shout out. You can DM me on Twitter or, either way, I've got your email address from the donation, and I'll send you an email, and we'll get this jersey out to you, and congratulations.
Yeah, and you got to watch because Brian has like 10 different email addresses, so he may use the Steel City Underground one for this one.
Yeah, assume that I will.
Yeah, if you are a listener, just watch. The address will probably end up in junk or spam almost indefinitely. It's pretty much, if anything's not like Google, Microsoft, believe it or not, AOL still has a high ranking authority, and like Yahoo, the big four there. It's just email is such a hit or miss thing, so make sure you check your spam mail or whatever. I do all the time. I still get some messages. I get nice people who've friended me on the craft beer app, and I get people who they catch me on Twitter and send me messages, or even a Facebook message. And I just want to let anybody know that may have requested they see me on Facebook or whatever. I just kind of keep that locked down since I have a young child at home, and I share lots of pictures of her, and there's just too many. What do you say? It's chaos out there when you usually do the show on your own or when you're hosting. It's chaos.
It's chaos out there. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's chaos out there. So it's nothing personal. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. I chat it up. I'll even talk on Messenger if I have the time, which free time is always the enemy. But you know what? It's nothing personal. Just I keep things private in case anybody's wondering, oh, that guy's a jerk. He's doing it to smite me. Wait.
Yeah, and the other thing, just because we've gotten such a nice response to the draft pods, especially on YouTube and all our other platforms, for the folks that are listening, we really do appreciate it. Love the commentary coming in, even if you're going to call me a tool. I'm happy. Call me whatever you want. I can deal with trolling. We certainly want you to be respectful. We like to be respectful. But if you don't agree with us, tell us why, man. We'll definitely get in there and talk with you about it. I really enjoyed the commentary that we've been getting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Same on the website, on the YouTube. If you say something dumb, I'm going to let you know. I try and be as respectful as possible and have an open discussion. Sometimes, though, some people just love to. They try and smite me. You cannot smite the smiter. It does not work that way. So, just going to throw that out there. I will not allow it. It will not happen. So, I think we have hit the end of the road, at least talking about the draft, because at least for now, the picks, and then we'll be talking about them again for through August. So,
oh yeah,
it's about this is going to be the dead period. We do get some OTAs. There'll be a little bit of excitement, I think. Hey, so and so completed a pass.
Rookie mini camp's coming up.
Yeah, got that too.
So we'll see if anything comes out of rookie mini camp. Then we got OTAs. We got get the guys back in the building, and before we know it, training camp will be here. And I'm putting the challenge out to you, Joe Kuzma.
Uh-oh.
Right now, this is the challenge for training camp.
Uh-oh.
I want us to do on-site podcast at training camp.
You know what? That may actually. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. That may happen. That may happen.
There you go.
So we'll see.
Then this is how you respond. Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. We're gonna get it thrown out, but I mean, it's one way or another. We'll see. We'll see. I think that can definitely be a possibility. We do have the on-site capabilities. It's just a matter of everyone's scheduling. If you don't know, we're all spread out all over the country too. We're not all just like in the Pittsburgh area, immediate Pittsburgh area. A few of the guys are, but they're all worthless. So, it's just I said that. I may have hurt some feelings. I don't know if a few of them even listen, so it don't matter. Anyways, we are dragging this out, so we're going to let everyone go. And again, we do appreciate all of the listeners and all of the feedback. And if you hadn't subscribed, please do. And you know what? We're trying to we're trying to actually streamline the show a little bit. So I'll get into that maybe more in the coming weeks. But there may be some platforms we show up on now and some platforms we come off of just because it's a little more effort than what it's worth. So I'll throw one out there for sure is SoundCloud, because they've been in business trouble altogether, and we've been on there, and we try and keep a few current episodes up on the service. If you're listening there, I mean, we're getting like a handful of listeners, and it's just it's almost we could focus our efforts on something else to bring you a better quality product in a different way. That's what we'll do. So apologies, maybe SoundCloud listeners, you may want to start looking into some of the other services. If you have an Apple iPhone or an iPad, you could always go on the podcasts app. There's a convoluted way to even leave us reviews if you like the show. We have maybe about 24 reviews on there. We could use a lot more. That would be helpful as well. Google Play Music, I think Spreaker, we have TuneIn. There's a couple others. I can't remember. They're all in the show notes, though, if you care to check it out. But until next time, we know what you tell. It's chaos out there, Brian, so you got to be safe and be good.
And be kind.
And we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.